And you can see the wheels turning.
Please listen.
Coming back.
A special tribute
And as we
remembering John McCain.
Surrounded by a bunch of handlers, and John McCain was Elvis in Vietnam. It was the most amazing thing in the world, how people adored him in Vietnam. I saw a bunch of photos on the wall of the prisoners playing volleyball, sitting in the sun with sunglasses on. I said, John, must have not been that bad after all. And he said, with a wry smile, I don't remember it this way, which allowed us to get out of Vietnam. I remember him embracing a war that nobody wanted to talk about because he understood what it would cost to lose it. I remember him supporting the surge when everybody was willing to get out of Iraq because they were so tired of it and saw no way forward. I remember the fighter. I remember the 2008 campaign when in 2007, John McCain was fifth in a four-person race. Written off as politically dead, no money, the Straight Talk Express had no wheels. I had a sheer determination after a visit to Iraq where General Petraeus allowed him to talk in July to 600 people are going to re-enlist in a war that they did not have to continue to fight. And about equal number were becoming citizens because they were fighting for their country and had expedited citizenship. 2 empty chairs in the front with boots. And John asked, what is that all about? 2 didn't make it to the ceremony, but they're getting their citizenship that day. I remember about 2,000 soldiers wanting a photo, and every one of them got it. I remember it being so hot I couldn't breathe, but we stayed anyway. I remembered coming back and getting the nomination only to lose. I remember that night very well. He had wanted to be president. He was prepared to be president, but it was not his to have. And I remember above all else, the speech he gave that night. John taught us how to lose. When you go throughout the world, people remember his concession speech as much as anything else. There are so many countries where you can't afford to lose because they kill you.
That's right.
And John said that night, President Obama is not my president. So he healed the nation at a time he was hurt. I learned that serving a cause greater than yourself hurts. Anybody in the military can tell you the risk you take. He couldn't put his jacket on. He couldn't comb his hair because he got hurt serving a cause greater than himself. I remember how easy it is to say and how hard it is to do. How hard it is to tell your base, I think you're wrong. How hard it is to solve problems that nobody else wants to talk about. I learned that failure and success are the different sides of the same coin. That John told me I have become better for my failures because it teaches us. And I've been tempted by my success. And without my failures, I would have never been successful. So to those who are striving as a young person,
that's good advice.
Remember John McCain.
That's good advice.
He failed a lot, but he never quit.
Right.
And the reason we're talking about him today, and the reason I'm crying,
he was a survivalist,
is because he was successful in spite of his failures.
That's right.
For family and friends, the After Action Report would say, a relationship with Maverick brought joy and difficulty. Both were your constant companion. He was a difficult man. He could be tough. But the joy that you receive from being with him will sustain you for a lifetime. And I am so lucky to have been in his presence. He taught me that principle and compromise are not mutually exclusive and the foundation of a great person as well as a great nation. He taught me that immigration, as hard as it is to solve, somebody's got to do it. And he said to me with Ted Kennedy, "You're going to learn, Lindsay, that the other side has to get something too."
That's right.
I have learned that lesson. To my friends on the other side, as long as I'm here, I'm going to remember that you have to get something too. He taught me that when good ignores evil, it may be convenient, but it seldom works. He talked about what would happen in Iraq if we left. He was right. He talked about what would happen in Syria if we didn't get involved. He was right. Why? Because warriors are the best, I believe, at making peace.
Right.
And the warrior understands the difference between a false peace
Right.
and real peace.
Amen.
To those who accused him of wanting endless wars, you had no idea what you were talking about. He wanted sustainable peace and understood the consequences of not seeing it through. The soldiers adored him. To those who have traveled with John, you seldom had 2 meals in the same country. You met more people than you could remember, but you were struck by one thing. We were going to really bad places a lot, and those in the military adore this man. He taught me that boldness and practicality must be practiced in equal measure. He believes in climate change, Sheldon.
Right.
And so do I. But there's a practical streak about John that I think made him very successful, because he told me time and time again, you have to let people catch up with you. You have to have a rhythm and a pace. There are 100 people in this body from different walks of life. You may think you're right, and over time, if you are, it will be proven.
Right.
But give your colleagues the time and the understanding.
For if it be of God, ye cannot
To
overthrow
catch
it.
up with you. He taught me that honor and imperfection are always in competition.
Oh, yeah.
I do not cry for a perfect man. I cry for a man who had honor and always was willing to admit to his imperfection. If you're thinking about getting in politics, the one thing I would ask you to look at when it comes to the life of John McCain, that it's okay to tell people, I screwed up.
Right.
I got this wrong.
Right.
I want to make it right. Honor is, in my view, doing the right thing at your own expense.
Right.
And he did that time and time and time again.
Yes, he did.
He taught me that life without passion and love is a sad life.
Right. It's worthless.
He had a happy life.
Yes.
He had 10 lives.
He had a fulfilled life.
He was involved in 5 aviation accidents. If we sent John a bill for all the planes that crashed, he could never pay it off. He lived life to its fullest. He was often disappointed, but he was never deterred from getting back up and going at it again. Love. Not a word often associated with Senator McCain, but it should be. Because if you were loved by him, you knew it. You were loved with all your faults. And I was lucky to have been loved by him. So, how would I characterize Operation Maverick? Wildly successful. It made the world a better place.
Yes, it did.
It gave the nation something to talk about at a time when we can't agree on anything.
Right.
Not universal acceptance of the life of John McCain, but pretty damn close.
Right.
The only time MSNBC, CNN, and Fox are saying the same thing.
Right.
And the only way that happened is because
of a determined soul.
Those of us who had the pleasure of being in his presence, and those who covered him in your business, want to tell the story. I haven't been approached since his death by cab drivers, waiters, cops. They said, sorry for your loss. My name is Graham, not McCain. But I feel like a McCain. I don't know if I've earned that honor, but I feel like it. The average man and woman in this country got John McCain. And what will it mean for the future? It means there'll be generations of politicians coming along who will be influenced by him.
Right.
The McCain Institute is alive and well.
Right.
And its goal is to get young leaders throughout the developing world, expose them to democracy, teach them the art of compromise, the rule of law. And what a legacy. John will inspire courage. He will reinforce the idea nothing is inevitable as long as a few people are willing to fight for what they believe is right. It is going to be a lonely journey for me for a while. I'm going to need your help. And the void to be filled by John's passing is more than I can do. Don't look to me to replace this man. Look to me to remember what he was all about and try to follow in his footsteps. If you want to help me, join the march. If you want to help the country, be more like John McCain.
Yes.
I believe there's a little John McCain in all of us.
I do too.
And the little John McCain, practiced by a lot of people, can make this a really great nation. So, my friend, you did good. You lived in the shadow of a 4-star father and a 4-star grandfather. You always worried, would you disappoint? You did not. To Cindy and the children, thank you for making me part of the clan. To Team McCain, you taught me what loyalty is all about. To my colleagues, thank you for your kindness. I yield the floor.
Amen.
An emotional Lindsey Graham on the floor of the Senate. His dear, dear friend, John McCain, he said, I was lucky enough to walk in his shadow, to be in the presence of a giant at a time when things were so small. Kelly O'Donnell, who has spent so many years covering John McCain and Lindsey Graham on Capitol Hill as well, joins us now. Your thoughts on what you just heard from Lindsey Graham, a very tearful but determined, it seems to me, to continue the legacy of John McCain.
In this current moment, Chris, we often don't see this sort of authentic emotion play out in our political settings. It doesn't happen very often.
No, it don't.
And it takes a person who could generate the loyalty, the friendships, at times the controversy, to make the feelings you saw displayed by Lindsey Graham so vivid and so important to him and to other Senate colleagues. This kind of a tribute is the kind of thing the McCain family wants to see going forward in terms of inspiration.
Yes.
Can an imperfect yet honorable person, as Lindsey Graham described his friend, inspire other leaders, those who are thinking about politics in their future someday, those who are entering the arena now, those who are presently office holders who might see that there was not always a negative price to be paid for someone in public life if he stood up to his own party or reached across the aisle for compromise. Those prices can be very steep in modern politics in terms of political bases on both ends of the spectrum, in terms of donor bases and interest groups. And for McCain, it was the largeness of his national presence that helped to buffer some of that. And yet he had some of the scrappiest primary fights in his recent past. And of course, ran and lost. So it was not a guarantee to success. But at the same time, he was able to remain someone trusted by the public. And so to encourage other leaders or people who are just involved in their communities as citizens to take some chances is one of the things that really is an outgrowth of what Senator Graham is talking about. The humor that came through there is such a part of John McCain and the relationship between Graham and McCain. Yes. One of my favorites, if I may.
Sure.
Senator McCain would always say, Chairman Mao would say, it is always darkest before it's totally black. And instead of, it's always darkest before the dawn, and he would deliver it deadpan. He would also say, the approval ratings for Congress right now are so low, single digits, that it's down to paid staff and blood relatives. And it would always get a laugh, and it would always break up the crowd. The worse the joke told over time, as Lindsey Graham said, the more endearing it became. So there are traditions and rituals that happen in the Senate, a Senate of a time gone by, that have sort of reemerged this week. We saw the black drape on the desk and the flowers and talk of finding an appropriate tribute, whether it's naming a building or some other lasting identification in the Senate of John McCain. And the McCain Institute is part of Arizona State University, already working on behalf of John McCain's inspiration and ideals to try to help leaders around the world. So a tough day for Lindsey Graham to say goodbye to a friend, and then surrounded among friends in the Senate. One of the almost reflexive things John McCain would always do, it was almost a verbal tick, my friends, my friends. And the intention of that was that the Senate was supposed to be, regardless of party, regardless of time of service, a place of comedy, C-O-M-I-T-Y, not comedy, the funny stuff, but colleagues and mutual respect. And so he would always address fellow senators, even those he was the most at odds with, as my friends. And that is a bit of a lost art now as well. And that's just one of the ways that John McCain tried to put an imprint on it, and perhaps Senator Graham and others who have been inspired or appreciate the service of John McCain will find their own way to do that as well. Obviously, there are only a few days after someone's life ends where people speak at length and honor in this way and talk about the best of someone and maybe not all of the controversial things. And we're still in that window here in Arizona, and we'll be in Washington and at Annapolis for a few more days as well. Chris?
You reminded me that one time when he was running for president, we were sitting outdoors. It was brutally cold, and we were in the Northeast, and we were waiting to get on the air. We're sitting in chairs, and I looked over at him, and he looked so cold, and I just said, Senator, are you okay? How you doing? I know how cold it is out here. Deadpan turns to me and said, God, I love Arizona. It was, he was priceless.
Absolutely.
He was priceless in those moments. Kelly, thank you for your coverage. Thank you for your knowledge. And again, let's see if what we heard from his great friend Lindsey Graham will turn out to be as such that, we all have a little bit of John McCain in all of us, see if it has any influence on the way politics is practiced by anyone in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Kelly O'Donnell. We'll be right back.